Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the Light Club with Nisi Filters UK. This is a new series we're going to be starting on the Nisi UK YouTube and Facebook pages, where every month we'll be interviewing a different photographer about their photography work. So my name is Kim Grant. I'm going to be your host for this series. I am an outdoor landscape photographer based up in Scotland. And this evening we are going to be based by the lovely Stephen Hanna from Northern Ireland, so that we can sit down and discuss many of his beautiful images from the country. If you have any questions throughout, please just let us know and we'll answer them, and we'll also do a little Q&A session at the end. So please write any questions out and we'll get back to you. So hi Stephen, how you doing?
I'm not too bad, Kim. Thanks.
Good, I'm really good, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's an honour to have you on here. And we're really excited to get know a little bit more about you and delve into your landscape photography. So yeah, for anybody who doesn't know about you, can you tell us a little bit about your photography and what inspires you so much about Northern Ireland?
Yeah, so obviously I'm a landscape photographer based over in Northern Ireland. So I kind of cover Northern Ireland and then obviously the rest of the island of Ireland. I guess, you know, the whole island of Ireland has so much scope when it comes to landscape photography, and because it's quite a small island as well, we can kind of get from one end of it to the other quite quickly. So there's just so much choice between amazing rugged seascapes and cliff faces to, you know, massive mountains, and maybe not obviously what you guys have over in Scotland, but you know, we've got some really nice mountain ranges and stuff. So we've got quite a good variety of stuff when it comes to landscape photography.
Yeah, I've seen some amazing photographs from over there, and I've been to Ireland a few times, and I always think it's quite similar to Scotland in many respects. You've got so many different landscapes within the country, and as you rightly say, they're all pretty much, you know, really close together and you can access them really easily. So it's no wonder really that you have kind of been drawn towards doing landscape photography, living in such a beautiful part of the world. And of course, this evening, you know, with us doing this as Nisi Filters, how important is filters, do you find, with your landscape photography?
So yeah, definitely for me, because I'm out shooting, a lot of times shooting into the sun and trying to shoot long exposures and stuff. I guess, you know, I'm one of those guys that I prefer to try and get it right in camera as much as I can. So for me, definitely using filters, if I can create one image and use the filters to create that image, as opposed to having to bracket images and start to blend things afterwards, I'd rather spend my time out in the field. So yeah, filters, pretty much 99% of every shot I take, I'm going to be using some sort of an AC filter, depending obviously on lighting conditions and, you know, kind of what kind of a look I'm trying to create. But yeah, definitely they go everywhere with me for sure.
Yeah, I can totally get like wanting to be out in the field much more than kind of being stuck at home on your computer. And of course, filters really allow you to do that. And then you've obviously got your ND filters and all that to create some amazing effects. So I've seen all the images you're going to be sharing with everybody tonight, and you've got a really good mix of different landscapes within Ireland. And before we share them and talk about them, what would you say is your most kind of inspired sort of location or landscape within the country? You know, are you more into coastal, mountain, or a little bit of both?
So if you'd asked me that about a year ago, I would definitely have said coastal. The Causeway Coast, which is the northern coastline of Northern Ireland, is about a 30-minute drive for me. So it's very, very accessible, and there's some hugely dramatic seascapes and stuff. I did spend a lot of time on the west coast of Ireland, shooting along the Wild Atlantic Way. But then whenever lockdown hit last year, obviously with all the different travel restrictions and stuff like that, I actually found that I headed into the Mourne Mountains, which is probably the biggest area of mountains that we have here in Northern Ireland, certainly in my mind the most dramatic. So I've really fallen in love with them. It's not a massive mountain range, but I just decided that I would set up a bit of a project to try and capture it using panoramic images. So a lot of my time has been focused on that over the last year, and I'm almost drawn now between the two, because it's, yeah, I do really love the sea, but now I've kind of fallen in love with the Mourne Mountains, which I always kind of dismissed a little bit in the past, because I had been over to Skye and I had been over to Glencoe, and whenever you come back home, things here just look so small. But now I've kind of found that once you're out in the mountains and you're experiencing them, in golden hour, in that amazing light, it just absolutely transforms them. So I'm probably 50-50. That's maybe a bit of a cop out, but yeah, I'm probably about 50-50 on the mountains and the seascapes.
Now, it's nice to have that, definitely. And I think within the last year, especially, people's ideas within their photography has branched out so much, and people have gone from really enjoying one landscape or one aspect of photography to branching out to other areas and sort of more accessible locations. So I'm not surprised to hear that. But it's also good because it gives you a little bit of variety within your photography as well. So you're not always shooting the same scenes. So I think now probably quite a good time really to get some of your images up so that we can look through them and discuss them. And what I thought would be quite good is for each image to go through and discuss, you know, where the image was taken, why you wanted to shoot it, what sort of inspired you and all those kind of things. So we'll get the first image up now and we can begin to talk through it.
Absolutely. So this is probably one of my more favorite images from the Mourne Mountains. So this was one of the ones that I had been shooting for the panel project that I was creating. So it's about a 7 or 8 panel image, obviously shot in portrait format, just before sunset, so kind of as we were in golden hour. And one of the things actually I found whenever I was the kind of the difference between shooting in the mountains and shooting at the coast was that I wasn't actually using a lot of long exposures in the mountains. So these ones here would have been taken with the Nissi. I used the V6 system, so it would have been with their circular polarizer. And then I tend to use the 1.2 ND grad quite a lot. My kind of style would be quite dramatic, so I'm always going for a slightly moodier sky. So this one here would have been using a combination of both of those, so the polarizer and the 1.2 ND grad, just to add a little bit of drama to the kind of the moody clouds in it.
It's a fantastic image. I think what really captures my eye here is the way that the sort of just before the sunset, you've got that lovely golden light hitting the, you know, sort of the middle of the mountains, and then you've got those lovely other mountains on the horizon there as well, giving the image some fantastic contrast. It's a really interesting image. And then when you look closer as well, you've got that sort of pathway leading out of the right corner, right through the scene. So you've got that great leading line there as well. So yeah, I think it's a fantastic photograph, and you've captured it so well.
Yeah, sometimes I find when I'm shooting panel images that you're trying to almost envisage what the final image is going to be like. So sometimes, you know, obviously if you're shooting in portrait format and you're spinning it around, you're trying to work out what your composition is going to be and where you're going to try and use your leading lines and trying to bring them in from a corner. And obviously if you're shooting a single image, that's really easy to do because you can see it on the screen. But whenever you're trying to put a panel together, you're trying to work out where exactly it's going to be. So I normally tend to shoot a little bit wider than I need to shoot. And then obviously once I stitch it together, it gives me the opportunity then to kind of crop in a little bit and sort of almost fine tune the composition if I need to.
Yeah, that's a great tip though. You know, you often find when people start doing panoramas, you know, for the first time, sometimes they don't think about having that extra, you know, bit around their image. And so then they do crop it, they end up missing out something really important. So yeah, that's a great tip that you've given there, definitely. Had you done much panoramic photography before this project started?
I had tried some of the seascapes and panels, and then what I was finding was that obviously sometimes trying to stitch horizon lines can be a little bit problematic, especially if you're shooting with a slightly wider lens. So I had always dismissed them, to be honest, until I started hiking in the Mournes. And what I actually found was a lot of the time I shoot with the Fuji system. So the GFX, the 23mm that I have is about an 18mm equivalent. And what I was finding was that it wasn't actually wide enough sometimes just to get the whole scene in. So I kind of thought, right, let's try and visualize this and let's see if I can actually shoot this as a panel. And I guess one of the other reasons is that most of the images I've seen from the Mournes in particular have all been just single images. So I've been trying to kind of capture them in a different light and in a different kind of way. And I find that shooting in that panoramic format has actually allowed me to do that. So it's a bit of a labor of love for sure, because you've got maybe moments of light, everything's happening so quickly, and you're trying to get maybe 9 or 10 images so that you can create one image. And sometimes it would be much easier just to grab one shot and that's it. But whenever the light plays ball and you manage to get it stitched together afterwards, it's definitely worthwhile.
Yeah, definitely. And I sometimes find as well, the great thing about photography is the amount of different things you can do with your images. And of course, panoramic photography isn't for everybody, but it's a great thing to try to do something a little bit different and to capture that vastness of the scene. And I always find especially that mountain ranges look incredibly good in panos, because you get that vastness within your final photograph, which you can struggle to achieve in one single image. So yeah, fantastic shot there. It's just stunning, and it's great to be able to give people a few tips there as well on panoramas as well. So yeah, great. We move on to your next image.
So you probably notice a theme running here, because there's going to be a few panels in this one. But yeah, again, this is an area of our eastern coastline called Galbally. It's actually been used in Game of Thrones filming, and I think actually I've been trying to get back up to it over the last few weeks, and there's filming crews back again. I think they're filming Dungeons and Dragons here. It's an absolutely stunning, rugged, dramatic section of cliffs. But this was a sunrise image, again a pano image shot with the Nisi, the V6 polarizer, and again I had the 1.2 ND grad on, and I tend to use the soft edge grads for all of my work. I just prefer the softer nature of it. I don't tend to really use anything other than that. Yeah, this was a shot I had planned in my head. I'd gone up to Reckitt during the day a few weeks before this, and it was one of those things where when you start to use photo pills and you start to use the photographer's ephemeris, and you look at where the sun potentially is going to rise, and then you start to plan, okay, is it going to hit this bit? Is it going to hit that bit? And then you're checking forecasts and you're trying to plan the optimum time to go. And yeah, this was the first time I actually then went to shoot the location. And yeah, really, really happy with how this one panned together.
You've got some amazing clouds you've managed to capture there, and I think comparing it to the last image as well, it just shows how diverse panoramic can be as well. You can do it on a varying different styles of landscape and come away with some amazing results. And yeah, that nice sweeping line going through the image here, and the sort of layers within the landscape, and that coupled with the beautiful sunrise sky here. Again, it's another cracking image you've managed to capture there.
Thank you. Yeah, I think a note on the sky as well. I tend to find that if you're shooting pano images, to be careful, because obviously when you're using a polarizer, the side obviously closest to the sun is going to look very different as you pan around. Of the left-hand image side of this frame is obviously going to be got a different kind of polarization than the right-hand side. So it kind of takes a little bit of tweaking just to kind of get that right, to get a nice balance there. A couple of other tips, I suppose, as well for shooting with the panos is I normally dial everything in manually, so my exposure is not going to change across the scene. I still use autofocus. I haven't switched over to manual focus yet, so I still use autofocus. But once I've focused on the first image, then I'll normally flick it over to manual, just so that nothing is going to be changing as I take each frame. Because the last thing you want is that you come back with maybe 9 frames and the frame in the middle hasn't focused properly, or there's a few issues there. So I normally, once I get focus acquired, then I'll normally just lock it on the manual, and then that's it out of the way. So yeah, I think there's definitely some scenes that work as a pano. I think this one here is definitely one of them.
And it's one of these things, isn't it? It just takes time to kind of train your eye and kind of work out what's going to work best. I suppose it's the same when you're shooting in one frame. So, sometimes your landscape orientation works best, sometimes your portrait orientation works best. And the more you do photography and learn these aspects, the more you learn what will work and what won't. And it's the same with panoramics here. Glenn Summers just said on Facebook that you'll be pleased to know that Dungeons and Dragons has stopped filming now. So
oh, perfect. Fantastic.
Again and do some more photography without affecting the film crew.
I have an idea for this image to shoot it at sunset. So it's kind of going to look completely different, but I thought I had probably needed to do it around June time, so the filming kind of scuppered that. But yeah, I may have to take a little trip back down again now and have a good look around. So thanks, Glenn, for
that. Fantastic. Cool. We'll move on to your next shot.
I think we just missed one there. Sorry, bear with me.
It's all right.
Yeah, so this one here, I would guess if any guys are following or watching from Northern Ireland and are into landscape photography in any way, they have more than likely photographed this tree in Tullymore Forest. Normally autumn time is the key time to photograph this, and you can normally bump into quite a few photographers whenever you're down shooting. For me, again, unlike the other ones, this one had a circular polarizer, but I also was using the Nissi, the 6-stop ND, just to give a nice longer exposure on the water, just to get a little bit of movement. I do that quite a lot when I'm shooting water. I'll use a mixture of either the 3-stop or the 6-stop Nissi NDs. So they just fit into the V6 holder perfectly. And they just obviously slow your exposure time down so you can get nice streaks in the water. And yeah, I mean, this tree I have photographed every year, probably for as long as I can remember. And I keep going back to it because every year I get a slightly different look to it. Whether that can be, you know, obviously water levels make a huge difference in scenes like this, because you could go back, you know, a week later and there could be, the whole place could be flooded and all those lovely autumnal leaves will be washed away. But I always find it's an interesting thing to do. And I would encourage anyone that, you know, just because you photographed a scene in the past before, you know, that's not it finished. You know, don't just tick it off your list and never go back, because, you know, it's taken me, this is probably the favorite image I've got of here, and it's probably taken me maybe 5 or 6 attempts to get this one. So yeah, definitely I'm a big advocate for revisiting locations. And, you know, even though everyone else may be shooting the same image or the same scene, you know, there's probably a reason for that. It's because it just looks amazing and it just screams to be photographed. So I think, yeah, keep going back to the same, you know, the same location. I think it's a really good, useful tip to improve your photography.
Yeah, there's always that debate, isn't there? Some people don't like going to iconic locations because everybody shoots it, whereas other people obviously go there because they're iconic for a reason, as you rightly said. Yeah. And I remember years ago, I was going to come to Ireland for a photography trip, and I remember looking, and there was about 4 woodlands within Ireland and Northern Ireland that every photographer seemed to go to around autumn. And I remember looking at the images and just thinking, wow, I can totally understand why, and I'd love to go there. But, you know, as you rightly said, you know, I regularly go to some iconic locations near me, and go in there in different seasons, different weathers, different moods, different tides, all that kind of stuff. You can get completely different images. So yeah, fantastic tip there. Colin says, what about the bridge? Is that near there?
The bridge, yes, so this is Tullymore Forest in County Down. So this is actually at the foot of the Mourne Mountains. So there is a bridge further downriver called Foley's Bridge. And again, it's, I think I may have actually bumped into Glenn, who come in earlier. I think I may have been chatting to him at it last autumn. But yeah, it's another iconic location which just screams to be photographed. And again, it's another location I normally do when I'm shooting this tree, because it's maybe about a half-hour walk downriver from here. But again, it's just this beautiful old bridge. It looks like something out of The Hobbit. And it's just got such amazing autumn color all around it. So yeah, it's another one of those locations that if you're heading to Tullymore in the autumn time, definitely check it out as well.
Glenn says, that looks great, Stephen. I've struggled with that tree to get it all lined up as I wanted.
Yeah, it's quite a hard one. They're just to the right hand side of it. You can't really see from this shot, but there actually is a path, and people tend to walk quite close to the edge of it and kind of walk past it. So normally getting down quite low, you actually hide the path, and that's a lot of it is. It's just even, you know, maybe moving a foot to the left or a foot to the right, or maybe a foot further down, and lowering your tripod a little bit just to kind of try and hide it. But I think when I was composing this, the effect I wanted to have was obviously having the tree on the right hand side and having those branches sort of like coming into the frame and almost like leaning over, and then obviously using the line of the river and the sweep of it as a nice kind of lead in line as well. So yeah, I'll be back this year for sure to try and get a slightly different angle in this one.
We've all got our autumn locations, don't we? I think that's what's so great about it as well, is some years autumn is incredible, and other years it literally lasts a few days, doesn't it?
Yeah.
One of these things, especially with these woodland shots, you really need to go, like you say, go back time and time again to get them. And we've got a question here that says, what is the first focal length you'd reach out for, reach out of the gate with the setting just like this? Sorry, what is the first focal length you'd reach for out of the gate with a setting just like this?
Definitely a wide angle. So typically, this was shot in the 23mm, which would be the equivalent of an 18mm on full frame terms. My portfolio, probably 90% of it would have been always shot on like a 16-35, normally as wide as I can go. So I love to just fill the frame with as much as I can. So yeah, this would have been an 18mm equivalent on full frame terms.
Yeah, it's great because you're able to include a lot in this image, and obviously with woodland as well, sometimes with the trees being so big, you do need to have that wide angle, don't you, to include it all in the scene. So yeah,
I've always found woodland quite tricky because you've got images like this which are quite obvious that you obviously, you know, there's so much going on. And then I've looked at guys, and obviously Simon Baxter comes to mind, and you know, you're shooting maybe with more tele lenses, and how he can just isolate trees and isolate images within a scene. I just really struggle then to see those little bits. So it's almost like landscapes within a landscape. So yeah, woodland is definitely a tricky one. As I say, that this scene to me just works as really obvious as a wide angle, but depending on your woodland, probably, you know, a mid-range zoom is going to actually be maybe more useful.
Yeah, I often find woodland quite tricky because trying to like eliminate the sky and the white overexposed patches that you get coming through the trees can be really tricky, which, you know, when you've got a telephoto lens, you can isolate your trees like, you know, you said Simon Baxter does. So yeah, it's all about the scene, isn't it? So yeah. Fantastic.
So we will move on. This one will probably look slightly familiar, the same scene as the first image. Again, one of the things I was trying to do in the mountains was try and shoot the same locations, but in very, very different conditions. So obviously this again is golden hour in the snow. Now this would have been shot with the 45-100, so kind of punched in a lot more, trying to compress the mountains. And the only filter I had on here was the Nifty, the V6 landscape polarizer, because really there was not an awful lot going on in the sky for me to warrant a grad, and obviously the light was coming in from the side, so balancing the exposure on the sky and the landscape wasn't really an issue. So yeah, images like this will probably mean different things to different people, and for me, I think one of the reasons I actually like it is actually to do with the story of it and the hike that we had to do to get there in the snow, because I think whenever you're hiking in the snow, everything just is much harder. It just takes longer, it's physically harder, it's tougher, it's colder. The wind was blowing a gale this evening, so you can become very, very attached to images, not just from a technical point of view, but from the emotional side of it. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I really, really like this image. Again, my compositions are fairly simple as well. I tend to try and use the rule of thirds and use leading lines. So I'm always looking for diagonals or rocks that can kind of lead the eye in through, just to try and create a little bit of depth to the image. But yeah, this is the Mourne Mountains, and the peak you can see there in the far distance is Slieve Burna. So it's one of the more dramatic peaks that we have over here.
I suppose this image proves, as we were saying earlier, you know, going back to the same location time and time again, different weather conditions, you get completely different moods and different photographs from it. And I often find the best photographers are the ones who will go out time and time again and in, you know, difficult weather conditions, as you did this day, to, you know, achieve these photographs that a lot of people, you know, wouldn't even think about going there on a snowy day. But yeah, the light in this image is beautiful. And another point as well, it's amazing what a polarizing filter can do. You know, a lot of people are aware that it can remove glare from water and make blue skies bluer, but when you're 90 degrees from the sun, it's amazing how it can bring out the colours in certain areas of your photographs as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and even though the sky is actually quite, I would prefer these kind of colours, those kind of pastel tones. I'd be more excited by those kind of colours than the real crazy, vibrant, fiery kind of skies. But yeah, like even I noticed with the polarizer, whenever you're shooting in that warm light, even on the rocks there, in the tors that are in the foreground that are running diagonally, you can see the massive change that the polarizer makes just to really bump up the saturation and the warmth of that. So yeah, as I say, the polarizer for me pretty much lives on the front of the lens 99% of the time. And then anything else after that is really just if I need to use then the ND filters, if I'm wanting to be creative with my exposure, or obviously then the ND grads when I need to balance the sky. But the polarizer is pretty much on all the time.
Yeah, I've got to say I'm the same. I use a polarizer a lot more than any other filter. And kind of referring back to the other image as well, you know, with autumn coming up, using a polarizer in autumn woodland scenes, it's amazing how much more vibrant the leaves can become, especially when they're wet. So yeah, it's definitely something really good to have in your bag, you know, progressing forwards. So
yeah, I think definitely if it's one of those filters that if you're new to landscape photography and you're considering buying one filter to start off with, that would definitely be the one I would recommend, going for, because it has just so many uses. And as you say, autumn and shooting woodland and shooting rivers and water where you're trying to cut out glare, it just makes such a massive difference.
And it's also something that you can't recreate in post-processing, you know, what a polarizer can do. So
exactly.
100%. And we've got another question here from Facebook asking, do you have a favourite app for pre-planning your shoots?
Yeah, so I tend to use two apps. Mostly I use Photographer's Ephemeris, which a lot of people are probably quite familiar with, and then another app called PhotoPills. So yeah, I find them extremely useful for just planning where the sun is going to be at a certain time of the year. So there's obviously locations, and I find it really useful when I go to shoot on the Causeway Coast, because it's a north-facing coastline. There are certain bays and coves that do not get hit by light until the extreme summer months. So most of the year they're actually in shade, and I use the likes of that to plan, so that I know what time in the year I need to go to hit certain shots. I've actually started using as well, the Photographer's Ephemeris have brought out a 3D version. I don't know if you've tried it, Kim, but I find it for the mountain photography. So the more that I've been beginning to shoot in the mornings, it's actually amazing that you can stand on a peak and you can just twist it round, and it will show you which peaks will be hit by sun at a certain time of day, at a certain time of the year. And I find it to be extremely accurate. I'm not sure how the technology works. It's a bit crazy, but I have found it to be extremely good, because obviously whenever you're shooting in the mountains, you lose the sun a lot faster in certain areas than you do if you're just shooting at the coastline, because normally you have the sun as it goes right down to the horizon. When you're shooting in the mountains, you could lose the sun half an hour earlier because another mountain peak has blocked it out. So if you're getting into mountain photography, I'd probably recommend the 3D version of the Photographer's Ephemeris. I find it to be pretty good.
Fantastic. I've got to say, I've never used that app myself. I've used photo pills and I find it really good. But yeah, because I don't do much mountain photography, I suppose that's maybe the reason why I've not looked into it. But yeah, that sounds incredible. It's amazing what apps can do nowadays. It blows my mind really for planning shoots. Fantastic. Well, we'll move on to your next shot.
Okay, so again, this is another, this is a sunrise image from the Mournes. And again, the peak on the right is the peak that I talked about in the last one at Slieve Burness. That's what, again, one of the, I think it's maybe the third highest in the range, but it's one of the most dramatic looking ones photographically. Filter wise, again, I've been using the V6 polarizer and then a 1.2 ND grad. And again, it's the soft edge grads. I find, especially for mountains, they just help the blend a little bit easier. And obviously, when I was taking the shot, I was kind of trying to bracket, I was trying to expose for the highlights because I didn't want to blow out the sky. So obviously using the grad and then making sure that I kept as much detail in the sun as I could, and then just lifting up the shadows and whatnot in post-production. But the big thing for me here was using the line of the Mourne wall as the lead-in line. It would have been nice actually if the sun was on the left-hand side of the frame, so that the wall actually led towards the sun, but I guess we can't really have everything. But yeah, that's one of the things I love to do when I'm composing images, is to try and use some sort of a diagonal lead-in line just to kind of create that depth, because obviously we're experiencing everything when we're on location shooting, and we can see how, you know, the depth of a scene, we can kind of see the vastness of it. Whenever you get that back onto a screen, or when it's indeed printed, then it can look very flat. So I've always found that trying to have diagonal lines actually helps to create that depth to it, and kind of show obviously what you were experiencing whenever you were shooting it.
Yeah, it's a really good tip there, definitely. I mean, the use of something like this to create that depth, you know, adds a lot of interest to your shots. And to have this image in this presentation is great as well, because it shows the different types of images you can get from the same location, you know, going there time and time again, experimenting with different subject matters, experimenting with different compositions and leading lines and times of the day and whatnot. And, you know, you can go away with so many varying images of the same location when you go back time and time again. So yeah, fantastic tip again. Perfect.
Okay, I think this is the last one. So again, this is the opposite side of the Mournes looking back. So if you can see on the left-hand side, the peaks that have the clouds rolling over. So that's where I was on top of that when I was shooting the first couple of images, so the panel images that I shared. But again, circular polarizer I used here. No grad, because I was shooting away from the sun. This was actually the same morning that the last shot was taken, so I obviously shot it towards the sun, and then I moved around here and waited till the sun kind of crept up high enough to light the foreground. But on this occasion, I had been watching the clouds, and this was really the only area of the whole sky where there were some clouds. So I popped on a 6-stop ND filter just to try and get about, I think this was like a 30-second exposure, just to try and create a little bit of movement in those clouds in the top left of the frame. And again, I guess for me, it's all about the light hitting the foreground. So you've got the rocks in the left-hand corner being lit, and obviously they're leading the eye towards the wall, which is then leading the eye down towards the peak in the middle. So that was kind of my thinking whenever I was trying to compose it, was that I was wanting to have a few different lines leading the eye further into the image. But yeah, these are mornings that kind of light, you know, didn't last very long, and you know, a few moments and it's gone, and the whole scene just looks totally different then.
A bit like your last image, the depth in this shot is incredible. And I love the top half of the image where you've got that amazing peak in the middle, and then you've got that, you know, clouds moving over the other peak, and there's like a lake there as well. And but as you rightly said, it's a light that was obviously captivating you that morning, and the way that it was casting on the landscape. And I often find to be able to move around and utilize that light and watch where it hits and being able to incorporate that into your images is what makes those really interesting scenes with the saturation and the contrast. And to be able to capture that, you know, in camera and whatnot, it's just it's an incredible thing, isn't it?
It is, and I think going back to what someone had asked there about the planning and the apps, that this was again one of those locations that we had kind of been planning, that we knew where we needed to be at that time of the day. And it was, you know, all you can do really, and I guess this is the thing about landscape photography, that you just have to get yourself up there and get into position, and then you're really waiting on the elements, and you're waiting on, you know, the sun appearing, and it maybe will, and it maybe won't. So if it doesn't, then, you know, you go back another day, and that's just one of those mornings where everything kind of came together. But certainly this image here was planned, that I knew you know, what time of the year that I needed to be shooting, where the sun would be coming at that angle. But I think the more you get out shooting, and the more you keep doing it, then the more experience you get of kind of being able to plan those kinds of things.
Definitely, that's the thing that people have to get through initially when they start landscape photography. You know, I'm sure you found it as well, but you've probably been out double the amount of times and gone home with nothing that interests you than, you know, getting those mornings where you come home with something that, you know, you're really, really happy with. And, you know, that's the kind of reality of landscape photography, isn't it? You know, as you rightly say, you've got to go out time and time again, and, you know, you're not always going to get the photographs that you want. But I often say to people, to me, landscape photography is more about the experience, and the photographs on top of that is like the I don't know, icing on the cake. But if I don't get it, I've had a great experience, a great walk, and I've just enjoyed being out there.
Exactly, yeah. Especially if you're doing any kind of hiking and things like that, you know, you're just being out in the fresh air, able to clear your head, and just out, yeah. Like, yeah, the landscape photography is definitely a bonus if you get an image. I think actually part of the problem is probably social media nowadays, where there's almost this pressure that you need to feed the beast, where people almost feel, well, I need to be, you know, creating images every single day because I need to be posting every single day. And I think we can look at, you know, a lot of photographers' work, and, you know, you just see image after image, which is just absolutely amazing, and kind of think, right, well, obviously they're out all the time, and, you know, they're getting these amazing images every time they're out, which is not reality. You know, so yeah, I think it's kind of just reminding ourselves that, you know, not every trip, unfortunately, that you go out will be worth your while from a photographic point of view. But yeah, I suppose that's you're just out the elements to the weather.
Definitely. Going back to your panoramic shots, Michael's asking, what f-stop would you normally use for your landscape images when you're doing your panorama sequences?
So typically, whenever I was shooting full frame, I normally shot around f11 for everything. With the Fuji system, it's the medium format system, so I'm normally shooting around f16 for it. But I normally find that gives me enough of a depth of field just to be able to keep everything nice and sharp.
Yeah, and I don't know if you found this, but I definitely find that every camera and every lens, it's slightly different to get that maximum sharpness, isn't it? So it can be quite hard sometimes to say exactly what f-stop you use. But I mean, f11 certainly seems to be one that works for a lot of cameras. So fantastic. Well, I think that was your last photograph. So I just want to say thank you very much for your time this evening, Stephen. It's been really interesting to talk to you, and I hope that everybody that's been watching has got something out of this. They feel inspired to get out and do landscape photography, and maybe even come to Northern Ireland when we're kind of allowed to do so. I suppose some of us are just now, but things are still a bit unclear places, aren't they? If you'd like to get in touch with either myself or Stephen, you'll be able to find our social media links at the bottom of this screen or in the description box below. And this episode will be kept on the Nisi UK YouTube channel if you want to watch back or send to anybody who's missed it this evening. So yeah, thanks again, Stephen, for coming along to talk to us, and thank you to everybody that's tuned in this evening. We'll be back next month, hopefully at the end of August, with another photographer. So I look forward to hopefully seeing you all then. Thank you.
Thanks.